Hello everyone, welcome to the next episode on Anubhav Learning Series. This is part 2 of our continuation of video series on creating simple REST service in S4 Hana. So in the last video, we have seen how to develop a simple REST service. What is the motivation behind creating a simple REST service over OData services? And what are all the steps which we will be referring in order to develop our REST service, basic REST service in S4 HANA. So if you have not seen the part 1 of this video series, I would recommend you to please check the description of this video, or you can click on the I button to navigate to the part 1 of this video series in order to get the information right. So now in this video, we will go ahead and start implementing our resource handler and resource provider classes to support a REST service. So for that, I'm going to take a simple use case. And the use case is to export out or return the data of our pizza application. Okay, so we have a database table created in S4 system. It's a custom database table which stores all the pizza information, pizza delivery information. Let me show you the data in this table. So I go here and the table name is ZBIP underscore orders. So that's the table name, which is stores the pizza delivery orders, best in pizza orders. And they are just kind of sample data. And you see there are some pizza information stored over here. Pizza delivery orders are being stored here. So what I want to do is create a very simple REST service to export this pizza data outside. Okay. Now another advantage of creating REST service is you can actually create an entity without key, which you cannot do it in OData. Yeah. So here you can actually create an entity without a key. You can return the data without defining the key. It's not mandatory to define the key when it comes to REST service. So this is the table we will be using. And now in our first use case, we'll just return one single record out of this table. So I will switch to the SE24 or class builder. As I mentioned in the last session, we will be developing this class for resource handler first of all. So let's implement resource handler over here. So put in over here, say create, and we will create a resource handler REST, and let's put inheritance, and we will inherit from standard SAP REST handler class. We put that, and as I save, currently saving in local object. I will be sharing this entire source code of this class with all of you. Please check the description of this video to download the source code of this REST implementation. So now it's important to implement this get root handler method. As you can see, if I just do a syntax check, it will give me an error. It says you must implement the get root handler method. Yeah, this is mandatory, and that's what of course this class is supposed to, because it is the first point of contact from outside to inside the SAP system when it comes to calling a REST API. So now in here we have to just maintain some code in order to define our entity template and also provide the correct routing for the actual resource provider. So that's something we'll do it next. But before that, it's time to implement the actual code to return the data out, and that's what will happen, of course, in the resource provider. So this is just a delegator class. It's going to delegate the request to the correct resource handler, resource provider, and that resource provider is actually where we are going to implement our method. So I'm going to go back and create a resource provider for my order data. So I'm going to call it as RP order, and let's create. And this one, of course, is resource provider for sales order, and I'm going to implement it again, inheriting from the CL resource resource provider. Awesome. Let's click on save, and this is where exactly we're going to implement those ABAP code for providing the data, get, request. You see get, put, post, delete, all those methods over here. So currently in this video series, this particular video is focused on the get. We're just going to return some data out. So I'm going to go inside, redefine this get method. And over here, we can write our code to actually return the data out. So basically this class gives you some standard object which you can use to return the data out easily. Yeah. So what are those objects? So you can always go and check the object name mo underscore and control space, and you can see here you get three objects always. Mo context is going to be the object which is going to give you the data in case if it's a post one. MO request is going to give you the request information, including the body and header, which comes in a request, and response is what you supposed to send it out. So what you can do is you can say, I want to send the response out. So in that case, you can say MO response, and then you can say set, uh, you can set the response data out. So I can just go ahead and now decide what I want to send back the data as out. So we will use this response object, and now we will say get entity. That gives you the entity object, the current entity object, and then you can say set. And now here is where you can set all the header and the outgoing data. So I want to send a simple string data out here. And this is what I want to do. Control space, press enter, and this expects me to pass now a string. So lvstr, this is my response data which I want to send out when somebody make a get call to this particular resource provider. So let's declare this string over here. Oops, I just have to go with above coding. So type string, and now it's time that we can add some data to it. So what data I want? I want to basically send the data, which is the JSON data. So I need to first read a record from my Best in Pizza order application and just map that data as a string, JSON string to this lvstr, which is then finally sent back as a response. So let's select some random record right now. So I would just say select single, start from ZBIP orders table, where or just into inline data declaration ls BIP pizza. So just selecting some data, and now it's time that I can take this data and convert this data to a JSON string. So this is another very interesting thing. SAP UI5 modules, which are available in the system, gives you one of a very powerful class to convert structures and internal tables to a JSON format. So you can use that class. So slash UI2 slash CL underscore JSON. This is what the class they give me. And this is an automatic class. And now I can call a method called serialize. So basically, I want to convert my ABAP structure to a JSON string. So you see, this is where the JSON string comes out. So we can just pass my data over here. This is my structure, and I would receive this JSON string. So, and very easy way of converting your internal table to a string, and that process is called serialization. So that's why we call it as a serialize. I'm going to save this, and I hope my resource provider get will be ready. Let's check. Yes, all the code is good. We can activate. So that's our resource provider. So we've actually coded the above code to return the data out. So now instead of this, you can have, n number of tables. You can use your material MATDOC table or ADO, CDA, all these accounting tables, whatsoever you want, you can include it. You can create a complicated, complex internal table with the deep nesting of structures and tables, and then you can take a JSON out of it. Yeah, that's what something you can do. Now, once this is done, it's time to come back to the resource handler class. And that's where we need to now link this resource provider. So I'm going to copy the name of this class, and we go back right to the resource handler class, go for change. And let's go to this once again back here. And this is where now, as I mentioning you in the last session, we need this router which links between resource handler and resource provider. So let's link them up. And this is the also place where you will say what is going to be my entity set name. So let's create a router object. So I'm going to create LO router equals to new class REST router. Just a reminder, you can also download this complete source code from anubhavtrainings.com. and you can implement it as it is in your company. Yeah. So then we can say attach, and I would just specify what is going to be my endpoint. So I'm going to name it as Anubhav as endpoint, and we will also name the class name resource provider, and that's what we have to give here. I missed it kind of. Let me just go back and bring it again. Yes, it was RP order. Now, remember, it has to be specified in capital letter. Okay, never do a mistake here. Don't give it in the small letter. Give it in the capital letter. All right, let's activate the REST handler. And of course, this RP order, whatsoever is not activated, we're going to activate everything together. Voila, it got activated. And now we are done, guys. We have implemented the necessary classes, both the resource handler, which is the first point of contact, and then from here, with this root, the root name is /Anubhav, we will be redirecting to the exact resource provider class. So the moment user type this /Anubhav, it's going to go to this class. And it's going to accordingly call the get put post method, depending on your request type. So the final step is to generate a SICF service. As you know that now it's time to expose this as a service, and we need to take help from ICM, SAP's Internet Communication Manager. And to talk to that, we need to go to transaction code SICF, and that's why we have to finally register our OData service, our REST service. Yeah. Let's go to SICF transaction. So that's what also we do when if you remember in my training, I've taught you for OData services that whenever you need OData service to be exposed, finally you have to go and register that in the gateway service builder, in the gateway service maintenance. But here it has to be done manually in SICF. So I'm going to go to SICF, execute, and just select default host and click on create host service. Click on that. And let's give some name here. So I say my REST service, and standalone service it's going to be, say okay. Give some description, my first REST service. And I can just go back to handler list. And this is where exactly now we will give the class name which we created, the handler class. So this ZCL Anubhav RH resource handler. So whenever somebody call this service, it's going to go and talk to this resource handler. The resource handler is going to route my request depending on the path which I pass to the resource provider. So you can have multiple resource provider like that for each of the route. We are done, guys. Congratulations. It's time to finally activate our MyRest service. You can just look at it here. Search for it. Yes, there you go. You just have to activate this. Activate this, gentlemen. And yeah, please activate. Superb. It's time to test it. I'm going to right click and say, please test my service. And it's asking me to launch. Perfect. Let's launch it on. Now it asks me credentials. So I just say, okay. And I see no root handler defined. That's okay, because you see it's just calling my REST. I did not yet give my endpoint. So my endpoint, if I just show you back, it's /Anubhav we have to give. So let's go back, and I'm going to put /Anubhav and then press enter. And again, it gives me no root handler defined, which is okay. Of course, it will give this error because we did not return our router object as a root handler. So that's something which I missed as part of my header class. So you see here this resource handler, you see this RO return object root handler. We did not return it back. So we have to do that RO root handler object. This is mandatory. And otherwise you're going to get that error message which you're getting here, and just pass this router object inside. Let's activate one more time. So it's good that this problem have come, so you understand the meaning of this line. I'm going to come back and refresh, and it gives me an internal error. That's okay. Let's try now. So now it says no suitable resource found. That's good. And I can say /Anubhav and press enter. It gives me internal error, which means there's something wrong probably in our code. Let's go ahead and debug now. So I'm going to come back and we will go straight into the get method of our resource provider. Hopefully it's calling our resource provider and there's something going wrong in the resource provider class. So that's why it's giving me this error. So I'm going to go to resource provider class and let's set up a breakpoint, external breakpoint, of course, to just see what's going on here. Is it preparing the result properly or not? Yeah. So we come here and now I am going to go back and hit this service again, press enter. So technically it should come to now the debugger point of our resource provider. And yes, exactly, it's hitting here. And let's see what data it gives me. So LSBIP, let's see if it has fetched one record. Yes, it has fetched a record, some random record. And now it's going to serialize. I'm going to say F6. So yes, it has serialized and voila, you see it has got your beautiful JSON created out here. And now it's the last step. It's supposed to return the data out. Okay. And this is where it dumped actually. So what is the solution? So it's as you saw that finally it has hit our resource provider. That's where the data is coming from. So now we have to look at what's the problem in this code. So actually issue is we have not even created the entity. We are just trying to get entity and send the result. We have not defined entity anywhere else. So it's time that we need to go and instead of doing get entity, we have to say create entity at runtime. So I have to just change this call here and say create entity. So that's another issue, very often mistake which we do typically while implementing the rest. Rather than get entity, we have to do create entity. Let's click on that. I don't need a debugger. And now I can go back and just refresh one more time my REST service call. So it's a get operation. So directly the browser itself is sufficient to make a call. Fantastic. Look at this response. We have got the single record out. That's your first response, get response from the REST service. It's also easy to call this from the Postman. So Postman is another REST client, very powerful. So you can come to the Postman and just call this API over here, make a get call, please. And I say send. And this gives me, of course, an error because I have to pass my credentials. So just hold on. I'll pause my screen. So in the authorization tab, I've already set my credentials for S4 system. And now I can just make a send. And you can see it's giving me the data. But hey, hold on. The Postman is not able to recognize this data as a JSON data. Yeah. So it looks like, a plain string. So Postman understand it pretty well. And as you can also see the header, response header does not show any content type. So it's important that we also send response as content type as JSON. So for that, we need to add some additional little bit of code on the get call. Let's quickly do that. So I'm going to come back to response again. And I will say that I want to send the response header. So set header field and just generate the code with control space. So field name is content type. In the header, the content type has to be JSON. All right, so let's now try activate and make a call one more time from the Postman. Got activated. Let's go back to the Postman. And last time we were getting it as a string response. Postman was unable to understand it as a JSON. And I just make a call again. Voila. You can see this time it is well forming because it understand as a response it's a JSON type. So this is very, very important, especially when you're doing integrations. This is quite interesting and critical when you're doing an integration with external third-party tool, and they're very, very peculiar about the response type in the header. So based on that only the system will determine the results. Oh, I hope you are all clear with this architecture, the steps, and the step-by-step implementation for GET call. In our next video, we will see how to implement the POST request for the simple REST services. So stay tuned on this channel. For always liking and subscribing on my channel, thank you so much to all of you. Feel free to subscribe our trainings on anubhavtrainings.com, and I will see you in the next video.